I got asked recently how you know you're ready to have kids. And you would think, as a mom of 9 who's been a mom for nearly 23 years, I'd have some phenomenal answer. I don't. What I have is having to tell you that most of what you're going to become as a parent is because of your children. Now, there's practical things, like you should be the most healed version of yourself. You should be in a growth mindset. You should not be believing limited beliefs about yourself, so on and so forth. Because more is caught than taught. Your kids are going to catch more than you teach them. But our children act like little mirrors to us that mirror back parts of ourselves that we have to get real honest with. And so it's good pre-work to get into that growth mindset, to get into that perspective of needing to be able to grow and learn. Because then when you're confronted with this tiny mirror, you're willing to do the work to be able to show up better for yourself so you can show up better for them. And if you're not prepared for that, that can be a surprise when you're like, why is this kid totally making me crazy? And you're like, oh, because it's exactly what I need to change about myself, but I wasn't willing to confront it. So I was sent a tiny human to be able to tell me that I had to confront that so that I can be the best version of myself. Now, that does not mean that it's your children's job to help you grow as an adult, but what it does mean is that you will be forced to grow because of the tiny children. And if you don't start the pattern when they're really young of trying to acutely grow and change yourself, it's going to get even more painful as they get older because the mirrors, they just keep going. Like you thought you were done when you were like, oh, that's kind of a part of myself. But then there's like, when they're 8, there's another part they're reflecting back. Then they're 12 and they're reflecting back another part. And you're like, oh, is there anything good about me? Like, I thought I was all right. I'm not all right. I just found out there was another layer. You're like Shrek. You're walking around just like an onion, shredding off layers. Then there's an even harder part when they're older and you realize you're like, why aren't you seeing that? You should be able to grow through that because you've personally grown through that because they shined the mirror to you. But they haven't yet grown through that because they need the tiny mirrors to reflect back to them. And so you're just sitting there going, it's going to hurt when you have to do that. Like there's going to be a mirror and you're going to have to step up to that. Now, I had a good example because my dad did this. My dad allowed me to be a complete moron for a lot of years. And he did so quietly and he did so with this. Yeah, I see how you can believe that. Or I see how you can do that. He never said you're a moron. However, he should have. He never gave me snide comments. He just allowed me to be dumb because he knew the tiny mirrors were going to reflect it back at some point. And I thought about this earlier because I was actually texting with my dad because he wants to come on my podcast, which is very exciting. Because basically the more is caught than taught theme of my podcast is what I learned from him. So basically, I was his tiny mirror that made him step up and change things about himself. And then I had 9 mirrors because apparently I had a lot that I needed to step up and change about myself. And now I'm at the point that he was saying, oh, all right, well, you'll eventually be able to grow and change through that. And just having so much grace, which is not easy. So I would say that you are ready to have children when you're ready to enter into the cycle of having tiny mirrors that will reflect back the negative portions of yourself and be willing to grow through them. Because I will tell you that that's probably one of the most difficult aspects of parenting.